So I've got some quotes for you here, right?
Sure.
In the one question is they say Nightshare, so the coach of Fnatic, ranked his ADC, so Rekkles, as the 5th or 6th best. What do you say to that? Do you have your own ranking or are you scared? Right? This is Carzzy's response. Just listen, guys. He goes, "Oh, to me, he was the worst one. But then I realized Jack Spectre is in the league as well. So I have him 9th. Right, this is going to be the next episode of the Best Damn League show. It's actually going to be the last one of this particular split, and then we'll have MSI, and then we'll come back and we'll do the summer split. Right, first things first, Dom. I think actually what we should do is do some sort of like just do the analysis of the final first, because I feel like that's the main thing people want to hear us talk about and the outcomes of the teams. And then what we'll do is we'll get to the more abstract stuff like MSI or what does it mean for the teams. We'll do that as we go through the episode. So I actually just want to start just with some pure thoughts on the final, because one thing I actually thought was quite interesting, Dom, was this is one of the weirdest finals I've ever seen when I look at other people's takes on the final. Because, dude, like, first of all, there's a type of fan out there, Dom, I genuinely think just doesn't watch the games. I'm not even saying that to be insulting. Like, I'm actually in a way affording them a level of intelligence I normally wouldn't, which is normally I would just think they're a moron, mate. But I actually think a lot of people, no joke, didn't watch this final. And here's why I think that is. Because when people saw on the like score of the series that BDS was up 2-0 and then they lost in the best of 5, right? Mate, people for real act like BDS was stomping Mad Lions. It's like, bro, I thought Monty's take was right. Both teams could have been up 2-0 on this series. Like, this was, I actually thought Mad Lions is the only team in theory that could have won every game in the series. I thought Monty had a good point when he said that to me. Like when I went back and I was watching it this morning, I was like, actually, it is ridiculous. Like, in both those first games of our Mad Lions, there's times in the game I'd feel like we're in a great position. Like, we can win this. Like, what did you think of that sense? Because I think a lot of people came into this with old narratives from admittedly only a week earlier, which is like BDS is clearly the best team. They should win. And Mad Lions is sort of fluking it. And so people tried to sort of force that narrative at the end. So, look, I do think Mad Lions still can throw any game they want, which they've shown you in these playoffs. But I actually did think in the final they were the better team, mate. What did you think?
I mean, they were definitely the better team in the final. I think for me, the biggest issue that I saw with the first 2 games is the fact that Mad was not able to win with big advantages. And when I saw that, I'm like, how are they ever going to beat BDS? Because BDS is a team that would beat them from early game. They were beating other teams early game. They were winning every single early Drake fight. They were absolutely like undefeated when it came to team fights around objectives. And if Mad Lions wasn't able to win with early advantages, I was just questioning how they could ever win, because I thought that was going to be the only aspect of the game where they could potentially have an advantage with their weird like Pike picks and Rel picks. And, you know, like with the Gragas mid, these types of picks that are better in the early game than some of the champions that BDS likes to play. Cassio, just things that scale more in general. So when I saw the game, I think the feeling of the series was that it felt like Mad Lions was just going to get 3-0'd after they dropped the second game, because it felt like they didn't have an advantage in the game. Even their advantages in the game, they weren't able to translate into anything. So if BDS just had a slightly better early game, BDS would just win 3-0.
Yeah, but there's another factor I don't want to bring into this discussion, right? If you know me, one of my biggest pet peeves with analysis, Dom, is when people act like after the game finishes that this was like one of those machines. I can't remember what they're actually called. There's a famous name for it. You know, the machines where they're essentially like a bunch of sequences that all activate from the first thing. Like you press a domino and it hits a card and then it makes a yo-yo go and then it makes a little ladder go. You know that those machines where you put the ball in at the top and it goes through the whole thing. People act like these finals are like that, dude. And like whatever happened at the end, like that was always going to be the outcome, and like every player had to lead to that. They act essentially like there's only one outcome. Whereas to me, not only was this final an example of one where, dude, we could have had any result in this final. It's ridiculous. And also on top of that, like I also don't think each team played how they normally do. Like for example, I actually think Mad Lions quite overperformed quite a lot in the finals and in the playoff run in general. Meanwhile, I actually think BDS, this is easily their worst fucking performance of the split, right? Every other performance, they were at least really good. Like in this one, they looked a bit sus at times, even though they won games. Like, what do you think?
I think BDS looked the same as they normally look. I just think that the pick and ban strategy was so much better from Mad Lions. And I thought that BDS actually normally they have a pretty good pick and ban strategy, and they didn't have a good pick and ban strategy for these games. So I actually felt like BDS played up to their standards, but they're a very exploitable team through draft. And
do you think Mad Lions did download him in the final, basically? Like, you know what? Yeah. Did anyone else come close to getting some of the answers, or do you think it's just Mad Lions were the ones? Because I mean, to be fair, they had more data than everyone else to run off, right?
I mean, I think that they were just the most cynical with draft, which is something that I've been saying since winter, where I feel like you can literally just ban Olaf Darius first 3.
It is sad that worked.
It
is sad that that just worked when they did it, Dom.
Yeah. But
you know
that's
what's
what
sad? I'm actually serious, bro. Even though normally we are just guys on a talk show going like, well, I'd do this. The joke is, after seeing Misfits with all last year, Dom, and then this VDS team now, unironically, I think we actually would be better at drafting in playoffs. Not because by the way, we're claiming we know the game better, just because we would just be pricks to the players that you need to be. Like, as you're saying, if you just do the dick bans against Adam, he just becomes half as good. It's no hate on him.
Half is very charitable. Saying half as good is extremely charitable towards Adam. But yeah, I mean, BDS, like, they have an extremely limited champion pool. So this is what I did on Power Spike, and I'll run it past you. What I did is I wrote down a list of 7 key picks in the meta that BDS can't play. They can't play 7 of the most key champions in the entire meta. And this should be like an auto win versus most teams, because if you're able to just like leave these up and they can only ban 3 of them, and then you're just getting power pick after power pick, should just give you a massive advantage in the game. So here's my list of 7 picks that BDS cannot play. Number 1 is Annie. They can't play Annie.
It's factual. It is, isn't it?
Yeah. And that's why they're banning it on both on both sides, because they refuse to play it mid. And if you don't play it mid, then you don't get the strength of the Annie pick. Like, you could play it support every single time, but part of the Annie strength is the fact that you can flex it mid and bot, and that it has pretty good matchups in either lane. Like, you could always put it mid, and in certain situations you can put it bot. The next one is Gragas. They can't play Gragas, and Gragas is like a triple flex. You can play it top. I mean,
you mean they can't play it at any position?
I mean that maybe they could play it at one position, but because they can't play it in multiple positions, the pick has no value.
So it's not a threat in draft, right? Okay, sure.
Yeah, so they can't prioritize it the same. The next one is Gragas. They can't play Gragas.
No, you
just
said Gragas. What's the next one?
Yeah, so the next one is Jace. The next one is Jace. They can't play Jace. They can't play Kennen. They can't play Cassante. Like, even though they did it, like, I mean, you saw what it was. Like, it's not a Cassante.
All I'm going to say, guys, is if you're keeping track so far, there's a lot of top and mid picks at the moment. That's all I'm going to say. Just all I'm doing is throwing it out there, guys. You know,
I mean, it's true. The next one is Rakan, which is surprising because Lebrov used to be a Rakan player, but they just refuse to play Rakan. I think that this is also a symptom of some of the other things that they have going on in their team, where they need to play a certain style of mid laner. They need to play like Cassio or Syndra, because they need to pick these hard carry mid laners. They don't want to pick a like utility 80 carry. They also want something that's scaling so that they're like strong at the same point in the game. So they won't play like Zyra Con lanes. They pretty much want to be trading like Jinx, Zeri, Philios, Perma if you're BDS. And then the last pick is Ahri. They can't play Ahri.
Oh, they definitely can't on that one. Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge disadvantage, because these are some of the most strong picks in the entire game. Like, other teams are just drafting like if Annie's up, everyone's drafting it. Gragas is going mid top every single time. I mean, you saw what happened when they started leaving it up versus Mad. Then you have like the Jace and Kennen pick. Those are huge champions. I mean, Jace is a flex, and also the thing about Jace is that it enables people to open different champions in their champion pool. So, for example, one thing that a lot of teams like doing is picking Jace early. If they pick Jace early and they put it mid, then enemy top laner has to pick something that would be like good into Jace. So let's say they pick something like Malphite or Sion, or they pick like some type of tank top to try to just, weak side top and still play into the Jace. Then teams will just be able to enable the Gwen into it, because you have the AD mid, then you can pick Gwen, which is another pick that BDS can't play. So there's so many different things here where they're just not able to pick core OP champions right now, and it makes drafting versus them like so easy if you are just cynical about it. And I'm really happy that just Mad Lions decided, we're just gonna ban Olaf Darius first 3, because he's willing to play Darius into like your Kennen or into your Gnar, these matchups that are unplayable. He'll take fleet footwork on Darius, he'll play it into those matchups, he's gonna build full tank. And it's not even that he's going to be super effective in the game, it's that he's not going to destroy the game. Whereas if he's playing Malphite into Cassante, you saw what he did. He TPs mid-level 3 and just ruins the entire game. Like, he solo ruined that entire game. When he's playing versus,
this Cassante looked shit. If people didn't see it, Adam's Cassante is a fucking joke, mate. It was depressing.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a reason why, and we'll get to it in a second, but there's a reason why most people thought Carzzy was like the MVP of the series, because he just gapped his fucking lane opponent. What do you want? But I'm going to guess you don't think Carzzy's the best. Do you actually, after this performance, does Carzzy deserve to be the best top laner? Has he earned it for you? My problem is I still think
yeah.
he's a bit streaky, Dom. He's good, but he's just a bit streaky for me. And
I mean,
also,
I don't know.
I also do think he does look like he's a bit like disconnected from his team somehow. Like he sort of plays however he's going to play, I think, and the team plays around him, if you know what I mean.
There's so much like whiplash that I feel like doing ratings just means nothing going into like these games, because there's so many games that happen every single week. And, you know, like, I guess you just have to say like all the Mad Lions players are like somehow like, you know, some of the best in their role. I'd rather just analyze what actually happened in the matches than try to be like, oh, is Chasey better than Photon? I mean, yeah, Photon like played poorly here. I mean, where does Adam go? I mean, with his performance, he could go really far down the list. I just think that the way that the system ends up working is that even if you do give teams like a solid rating, it's going to change in like the next week of play anyway. Sure. So like,
yes,
it's almost like who the fuck cares about like rating players until maybe like the end of like the season or the end of like both splits or something.
Sure. Because I have to say, that's the one aspect I would tell people not to get too overexcited about. It's like the reason that Chasey guy is not going to look like this in the future is because when's he ever going to be in a best of 5 where someone's going to play like Adam did with no fucking champions, as you say? Like, if people don't know, the Chasey guy was also one of the reasons why, like I said, Mad Lions could have won the first 2 games. Like, mate, he was just winning every game. Every single game looked great. Like, the joke is, if you watch this for real, look, this is a reductive example, but I'm purposely using that to highlight how extreme it is. Like, this is almost like, it's not quite as bad, but this is almost like Evie in Heretics territory, where when you finally ban the Kiss Ante, you're like, why weren't we just doing this all the time? What? Like, why was this not option 1? Like, because the idea people only did this at the end of the split is mental. When and they almost won.
I fucking hate the way that LEC teams draft right now. I'm so pissed off watching it. I mean, I watch the games and at the end, Niski's getting like 2 Gragas games. And like, I mean, it's good because I want to see Niski win because he's my boy. But at the same time, like, how are you going to give Niski Gragas ever? Like, every single time, the G2 series, they got Gragas 5 games in a row. They put it mid 3 times. They did lose 2 times. They put it top. But once they figured out like, oh, we win every single time we put it mid. We lose every single time we put it top. Let's just put it mid. I mean, he's winning 5 of his most important games on Gragas. I don't know why everyone just gets their key champions all the time. Like, it's this weird respect where people think that, yeah, they're really good on that champion, but the other champions are so OP that they'll be even better on that. It's like, oh, well, that champion is not that champion. Like, Annie, Rakan, these are not the same champions if you put them in the wrong player's hands. You know, Gragas is not OP if you put him in the wrong player's hands as well. It's like all these champions are super situational. So every time I'm watching LEC, I'm like, oh, how is this guy getting his champion? Oh, how does Adam get how many games of fucking Olaf and Darius? How many games of Olaf and Darius did he get this entire fucking year? I don't know how many games it is. I'm gonna look it up right now on Games of Legends, but it's got to be absurd. It's got to be like 15 plus.
In this split, in the spring split, he played something like 21 games. I'm gonna guess, Dom, out of 21, it's at least like 9 or 10. And almost half, basically, I'm going to guess.
Oh, let's see.
And this is with 5 games of it being banned out in the finals. Let's see. Go on.
So they don't do it by splits because there's no one else has a winter split. So they just have like spring on Games of Legends. But he's got 12 games of Olaf and Darius.
So the majority, that's mental. All right, out of 35. Yeah. Okay. It's still a lot, though.
Yeah, it's still a ton. I mean, it's his 2 most played.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, his win rate on Darius is 83%. His win rate on Olaf is 66%. I mean, he's doing well every single time that he's getting these picks, and people just give it to him every single time. The Niski one, I don't even know what the reason to ever give Niski Gragas is, because when you see the team play and he's playing Gragas, the team looks infinitely better.
Yep.
He's 11-1 on it in terms of score. So going into that last game,
plays so well as well, Matt.
Yeah, and it's OP. It's considered OP. Like, he plays it really well. They win on it every single time they fucking play it. When I look at all the factors, I just don't understand why everyone is just getting their best champions all the time. It just doesn't make
I'll give you 2 theories.
Sense.
Right? One is, and this actually, in a way, it's a criticism, but I also sort of understand it from like a job perspective. Look, to be fair, the old method of how you used to be a coach in LEC before the playoffs was obviously you're essentially practicing against the field, and then you just tailor the draft slightly to the opponent you play that week, right? Like in theory, in LEC, normally the regular split was more about get your level good, then go into the playoffs and try and win. So I actually do feel like almost one of the things these coaches are doing is, this will sound stupid, Dom, but I sort of get it, even though I wouldn't do it personally. I feel like what they're doing is this: they don't want to practice for or even in games heavily draft, basically, in a way that they would only draft against Adam and no one else. They want it to be like the way we play and draft generally is like our style, it's our thing, and we do it like this. And then, like they think like consistency of like what you give your teams like the best approach. So I think if you do that, the obvious blind spot is you're just going to lead in these scenarios where like I agree in the general principle, you want to make your team like good and have an identity. But as we're saying, these are examples like Evie and Adam where you just cynically draft against the guy. Like if you do that, it's not like I don't even care if you say, but I can deal with it. You don't need to. You don't need to deal with it. Just put him on a bad champion. He's bad. At that point in time, the game, there's no need to deal with it. And then the other thing I'd throw in there is I also think we need to make a distinction from now on, dude. It's one thing if someone plays like meta champions and then they play a bit of something else, like if it's in the current meta, like it's like a slightly out of meta champion. Dude, it's different when it's the ones like the leader or the Adam ones. The joke is, like, I often make this joke, Dom, that when I play League of Legends, I don't play League of Legends, I play a Pike, because I just play it every single time, no matter what. That's what these guys are like, even though they're pros. Like, they have put in so many more hours. That's not even just a pocket pick, Dom. That's like essentially what they mainly play. And if anything, the joke is, for Adam, when he has to play League of Legends on anything other than those champions, it's when his experiences were like, what the fuck, this is my normal. So I think people get lost in those too, dude. Like, they underestimate how powerful that champion is on somebody who only plays that champ,
What I don't understand is like why, for certain players they'll be able to get it. With G2, they never got Draven again after the first two games this split.
Oh, dude, that's the weird thing.
Game.
Dude, I think the craziest thing you're also nailing is that they'll do it. Here's what's mad. In fact, I think you've nailed it. They'll cynically ban really good players who have a sick champion that they cracked on. But if you're bad, it's like they have to, out of ego, believe they can deal with it. You know what I mean? Because you're right. If like everyone knows the stories back in the day. You know when Faker would play something in solo queue for 2 weeks and he would just be so cracked that you never even got to play it in LCK because everyone just. You're right. It's actually how good you are as a player. It's if the player's not actually that good, they just ego let it through or something, don't they?
Yeah,
I think you're right. I think you've nailed it.
Look, all I'm saying is OMG wishes they got to play in this type of fucking league because OMG, every single game they see a fucking Rumble ban 1, 2, 3. They can't get their champions no matter what the fuck happens.
Of course.
And then LEC is just over there. They're just so mad. It's like, oh no, we want to beat you. If we can't beat you at your best, we don't deserve to beat you. Like some shit like that.
It's almost the shit. Yeah.
It's so fucked up. I just want to see people ban out you're supposed to be attacking the enemy team in draft, but you just give them everything they want. It's too much on the side of what is optimal drafting and is Gragas actually a good champion in the context of this draft? Well, if we have these types of champions, Gragas shouldn't be that effective. It doesn't fucking matter because no one's playing close to perfect. So just ban the champions that they're good at. It's so basic. Ban the champions they're good at. Leave up the champions that you're good at. Boom. There you go.
Basically, just imagine Dylan Falco, but he's got blue tinged hair and a nose ring. And he's like, if we can't beat them at our worst, we don't deserve to play them at our best. So you're right. That almost is the mentality. It's so dumb. Because as I say, the problem with those convos is I know how those convos go, and they really do go like that. Like the coach gives the chance to the top laner. He goes can we play if he picks the Darius? And then they don't just go, well, yeah, but it'd be a lot easier to play against, whatever fucking Sion. Instead, they go I can handle it. But it's I actually once heard this comment, actually, funny enough, about men and women. There was a woman who basically came on her show and she was like, look, I need a man who's an alpha male. He has to be able to handle me. He has to know when I'm in certain moods. And then someone just said yeah, but here's the problem. A lot of people are going to hear that and just go why would I need to handle anyone? Why can't you just be cool? Why can't we just have a nice relationship? Why would I go into it with that mentality? So I have the same logic. When someone says it's okay, coach, I can handle this. It's how about let's not handle it? Let's just actually skew the draft so that they're in really bad shape and just win. And then at the end, here's the best thing, guys. Yeah, Adam could come up to you after you've won the title and go, you know what? I'd have beaten you if I'd have had Darius and Olaf. And you can go, well, see ya. I enjoy second place, dickhead. Who cares about that? No one cares about that story. That's not a real thing, is it? I know. It's not like he can ego tell you have to give him his champion. Yeah. I mean,
the difference between the players that are playing their champions versus not playing their champions is so massive that it's almost inconceivable because people will think, oh, he'll be able to play Malphite. He'll play it fine. Yeah. He won't. Yeah. When he's uncomfortable, Adam will just start doing random shit in the game. Yes. He will literally just start walking around the map for no reason because he doesn't have that that high base level understanding of League of Legends. He doesn't play League at a high level. He plays certain champions at a high level. So you can't even prep for how ahead you're going to be. You're like, oh, well, the matchup is going to be fine. Yeah, sure. If I play against maybe if I play against his Malphite and not his Sion, I might be up 30 CS, but he's going to be stronger in the team fights because he's Sion or Malphite. No, he's not going to be stronger in the team fights. He's not going to get to the team fights. He's going to be so lost in the game. He's going to be so uncomfortable from not playing his champions that he's going to be TPing mid level 5 with Comet, Doran's Ring, Malphite, and be walking around the map and you're going to get a 100 CS lead. Like, that is what's actually happening in the game. So there's so many times where I'm looking at these people get their pocket picks. I mean, look at G2 when they get Draven. When G2 gets Draven, they just win the whole game in 20 minutes through bot lane. You can't breathe the entire time. You can't do anything in the fucking game. They're so practiced at snowballing the game. They play anything else, they look like a completely different team. This is my main point. All these teams look so much better when they get their champions. And I guess it's just from the outside that you see it more when you're on the inside and you have all these scrim datas. I think it kind of clouds your judgment because you have so much more to work with. But if you're just watching the official games, even the Sion that people are like, maybe Sion is Adam's third best champion. He had a fucking horrible game on Sion. He had the game versus Heretic.
Yeah.
No, I was talking about the one in regular season. He had the game versus Evie in regular season where he was trying to dive bot and he got his TP canceled and he literally just didn't go back to top again. He was level 2 when the other guy was like level 7. It was one of the most ridiculous games that we've ever seen. And the takeaway from that, from Adam, when he went on the broadcast, was like, yeah, it doesn't matter. I'm Sion. It's like, no, it does matter. You can't just be Malphite and Sion and be down like 150 CS. Like the other guy, if his name is not Evie, if his name is Chasey and he's up 120 CS, he's just going to win the whole game because he's going to be unkillable. This is the type of stuff that needs to start happening. Like, I'm so tired of seeing teams just win while playing their best stuff.
Oh, by the way, if people go back and check, I have given Adam his props for this split, and I even gave him a few last split when he had the odd game. But the difference is I never actually say he's a top player. Because the problem is, like, you know the comment I said to Nook, well, it wasn't even to him, it was just about him on Twitter that he got like, he didn't even get that hurt, by the way. He even liked when I sort of flamed it back after the final. So actually, Nook, believe it or not, maybe has a sense of humor, fair play. But when I made that comment where I basically just said, I essentially just implied, like, this is the best Nook will ever look because of the team he's on and all the shit going on. And basically, if you put him on no bottom team, it's not going to be like this. By the way, that applies to Adam like 5 times more. Like when I don't think this is one problem I have, right? I know part of it's that he's French and also he's young and he's got that spunk, as you say in English, he's got a little spiciness to him. But mate, Adam talks like he has the arrogance. Like he talks like he's my mate Soaz, when my mate Soaz was one of the best players in the world. Like Adam, bro, not only are you not that good as a top laner, I genuinely think you don't even actually understand how your team hides you and covers you and actually makes it work. Like I think if you put this guy tomorrow, Dom, onto Rekkles instead of Evie, he just tanks the whole game. He'd be dog shit. Like he wouldn't be the worst top player in the league, but he would be among them.
I mean, it just depends on if they're giving him Olaf and Darius or not. That's literally what it is. If he gets Olaf and Darius, he's a completely different player. I mean, even the playoff games that he ended up winning, like the series versus Vitality, those Olaf games or those Darius games were not like insane Darius games. He's not 1v5ing the game. He's just able to exist and be like reasonable. I mean, there's so many problems with how BDS play the game. Just inherently because they play with Adam. So number one, here's something that I figured out while watching them. They never play on 3 lanes in the mid game. They never play on 3 lanes because they're so conditioned because Adam always has flash ghost, right? When he's playing Olaf, when he's playing like Darius, he always has flash ghost, which means he has to perma group. He can't go to a side lane because then the team starts a team 5-4v5.
Doesn't have TP basically, yes.
So they literally will only play on 2 lanes every single game. For all of eternity, they will never be getting farm. Like that is such a massive disadvantage. You're giving a full lane of farm the entire fucking game because you refuse to play on 3 lanes because you don't have the summoners to do it.
This is actually something Monty made a point on Summoning Insight, but he did that thing where he didn't complete the point. So I know like a casual fan will miss it. The reason Monty on Summoning Insight said that if BDS had gone to MSI, the team that would have like made them look absolutely stupid is Gen G. Because if you don't know, guys, Gen G is probably the best team in the world at just using waves against you. So if they'd have played against BDS and even just watch the VOD stop, they wouldn't even have to play League of Legends. The map would just beat BDS. Like BDS all game long would be like the noob and solo queue. Like, why is it always pushing in my base? Like they would never even be able to play the game, guys. It wouldn't even matter if they had an early lead. Like it's actually low key. Even though it's fucked up because BDS played so well, like they sort of deserve to be second in terms of the results in the games. Like they would actually have gotten fucking ruined at MSI, mate. People making fun of Mad Lions. It's going to be way worse if BDS had gone. Don't you think every top coach would just shred this team?
I don't know. I don't know how good coaches are. Like, I don't know if coaches are just like, if they're actually going to prep for BDS or if they're just going to let these picks through because of ego. Like, I don't know if BLG would just be like, oh, he plays Olaf, fine. Like, Ben will just play fucking Fiora. And then maybe you lose somehow. Or maybe you play Fiora into Darius, one of these matchups, and somehow Ben is actually losing one of these matchups that's supposed to be a counter matchup. I have no clue how it's going to fucking go. I feel like it's so hard to predict how things will work dependent on like what you expect coaches to do, because I mean, even in LEC, I'm expecting people to ban these champions. So how are teams that are less familiar with these organizations, how are they going to suddenly draft better into these teams if LEC still can't draft into these teams after 2 full splits of playing against them?
The LEC final was fire, but it had to be uncomfortable for both of the teams with how awkward the back and forth was and how close the games were. Well, you know what? Avoid the awkward sensation of having to experience hot, irritating smoke in your lungs when dealing with fire and smoking cannabis products, thanks to our friends at the Freeze Pipe. Just put the food-safe glycerin chamber into the freezer for a mere hour and it'll cool your smoke more than Adam got cooled off by the drafting from Mad Lions in that final. Over 300 degrees in this case. Then you can simply enjoy the chemical effects of your weed without having to wait for the coughing to subside. I need a freeze pipe, mate. Sure, when I saw the level of the final, I was upset because I was like, I'm a head out. But if I'd smoked my freeze pipe, the final would have been a whole lot cooler all around. Get 10% off your order with the code LFN at thefreezepipe.com. What about on the Mad Lions side then? Because the one problem I have with this Mad Lions win is like, in the final, I can give mad props to all the players. Like I thought most of the players had very good games in certain scenarios, but like I feel like it's so circumstantial how they got this win. Like I can't get past it, Dom. Like in my mind, this run, like let's be real. Since people called that Schalke a miracle run, where they just made the playoffs and then got eliminated immediately, like but this is more of a miracle run, guys. They came from they came from what would have been last place in groups to all the way to win the final in Game 5. And that's a miracle run. But it is a miracle, Dom. Like this can't repeat. Like for example. Like, we can go player by player, but if we look, for example, at Carzzy, mate, at this point in time, he's just like the smooth criminal. I don't know how he gets away with it. I don't know how he does it. Like, he just steals shit. Like this is a guy where all split long, he was just average as fuck. And then somehow, like, they just found this drafting strategy that just works and allows him to get the picks that somehow actually he can win on the game on. Like, but that just makes me think, like, what were you doing all the rest of the split? What the fuck was the BO1s? Like, what? I don't get it, man. Like, how have they figured this out at the end? Because when I watch the final, I still don't think he's close to the best ADC, but props. They found a way to make it work. Like, it did work in the final.
Well, I don't think he needs to be the best ADC. You know, like that's just not what the team needs. I mean, I don't think he was like
he wasn't even better than Crowdy in this final, guys. I'm just saying. I don't care that he won. Crowdy was better than Carzzy in this final.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, game 2 is 100% a win for Mad Lions. He literally lost the whole game shifting forward, which is what you always criticize Carzzy on, is that he's going to be the AD carry that gets caught and loses the game. Look, not everyone that wins a championship obviously deserves to win a championship for the split. Like, I could make the argument where I think Crowdy deserved to win a title, because imagine what he has to fucking deal with when it comes to draft, when it comes to how the game's played out. Pretty much if Crowdy is not like 10-0 in the game, they lose. That's literally what
I said on SI was this. The real reason it's so sad for me Crowdy didn't win is because, mate, if he'd have won, of all the like players ever to play ADC, he would have the best case. Like, I had the best split ever. Dude, who could even fuck with him? Like, there's no Rekkles or any of these other players from ADC that won that had a team like he had, mate. That would be insane to win. And he almost did, bro. He was carrying the fuck out of that final.
Yeah, he was carrying the fuck out of the final. So when I got to vote for finals MVP. So you get to put in three votes, like your first, your second option, your third option, and they're all on Mad Lions. You can only vote for the team that wins.
Okay.
And my first was Chasey, my second was Niski for the Grog's performances, and my third was Hilly. So I don't think that Carzzy was like a top player in the series. And even though like Elyoya played well, like I would argue Carzzy was probably still the worst player on the team in this series. And it's not that like Elyoya and Carzzy played bad, but it's just Hilly is like winning the game for you, level 2 every single game.
Yep.
He's just burning their summoners. Level 2, he's getting you a solo kill. Like the amount of gap between Hilly and Lebrov in lane phase specifically was absolutely crazy. Hilly was smurfing up the fucking lane. Chasey was smurfing the lane top. And then Niski, like in the games that they won, Niski was, making all the plays in the mid game. So I don't think Carzzy's bad. I just don't like his style of AD carry. Like his type of AD carry gives me anxiety. He just makes me feel like he's going to throw the game when he has resources. And I think that one thing that Mad started doing to get away from this and to cover up this problem is they stopped playing the combos bot where your support is reliant on your AD carry. Instead, they made it so the AD carry is reliant on the support. So Hilly gets to make the play, and all Carzzy has to do is follow up. Before, they were playing Lucian Nami a ton. Like, they weren't playing any Lucian Nami over here. They weren't playing any fucking Lulu. They dropped all the picks that they were playing earlier that made Mad Lions look shit because they would put all the eggs into the Carzzy basket. They would have him on Zeri. They would have him on fucking whatever.
They basically played like he was upset, which is what's so bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah, they would have like him on Aphelios with like Thresh. They would just play like all these different combos, and Hilly's just there trying. Number one, Hilly's not even that great of a protector. He'd rather be an initiator anyway. But Carzzy would just not carry the game. He would just lose summoners when he shouldn't lose summoners. He wouldn't do enough damage in certain fights. He would just choose the wrong point in the fight to open up. There was so many different problems that he would have in order to carry these games that they just ditched that identity. And yeah, I think that's why they look so much better, is they went back to the Mad Lions style of play where they're going to pick their rel when if you give them an option. If you leave it up, they're going to pick Pike. They're going to pick Blitzcrank. They're going to pick all these types of champions where Hilly can make his mark on the game early game when he is one of the best supports.
Oh, I do think also, like, to some degree, this playoff run was actually like the true resurrection of Hylissang, because there's another thing that I noticed. Like, first of all, as you say, they definitely drafted like Hylissang's classic champions, and he looked great on them all, by the way, guys. Like, the joke of his Pike is he actually has, like, with his just before he even makes a fucking play, mate, you can see the intimidation factor on the opponent. Like, they know that Hylissang Pike is different from any other Pike. Like, even people like Yonghun who can play it, like, there's not the same fear. Like, people are like fucking. Yeah. The joke is when you're playing Hylissang Pike, people are just like, their fingers already over like the flash key, you know what I mean? Like, they're just so scared he's going to go in at every moment.
It's so crazy to look at the game that he had on Pike, because after that Pike game, he wasn't getting Pike again. But like, if you looked at the game, you watch what was happening in the game, you would have thought that this guy had like, fucking 5 kills, 10 assists, something crazy. And he had like he was 1, 2, and 1 or something when they had like 20 kills. He had so much pressure in the game, but he actually wasn't killing anyone ever. But wild, just the fact that the presence that he had in that game was just it was so crazy to watch. I don't know. It was interesting as fuck to see, and then the also, level at which people respect him.
To me as well, the other thing, if you look now over this year for Mad Lions, is this just shows like how you can't just view players individually. Because essentially, when we flamed the fuck out of Hylissang in summer, that was also a guy who's a famously roaming support who was trying to work with fucking Humanoid. Also, he was playing drafts that you could never even get out of lane with. And then secondly, he was playing with Humanoid and Razork, who have no connection together and had no connection with him. When you put him on a team with El Yoya and fucking Niski, Michael looks twice good. Just twice as good immediately, because those are players who also play around the fucking map and roam and move. And you could see it's brought him back to life, mate. He just likes the game more, I can tell.
And Carzzy is not a demanding AD carry. Like, one of Carzzy's biggest strengths is that you can leave him in a lane and he'll try to lose the minimum, and he's not going to he'll into team fights, but he's not going to just randomly die under his turret when there's like a wave stacked and he knows he's getting dove. Like, he's willing to give up things and let the support play for the team, and he's pretty smart about knowing when he's strong side, when he's weak side, which waves he can catch, which waves he can't catch. Especially when you consider the fact they brought in Ezreal, which is one of the best picks to do that with in the entire game. I think that Mad Lions actually figured out what their team was, and they drafted to make their team as effective as possible, which is what I wish all teams did. And I think BDS was the second best team at doing this all split when you look at the way that they adapted. But then you look at some of the other teams. I mean, Vitality got third. To me, this isn't even a fucking third place. This felt like a fourth place. Like, I know what you mean. I don't think in any world they're beating G2 if they played in like the series afterwards. I mean, I think G2 would have just beat Mad Lions if they banned Gragas. Legitimately, I think it was that one ban away. So even though G2 technically got fourth, I feel like they could have ran the gauntlet. Whoever won that series, I think, could have just won the whole thing, because G2 just, I mean, obviously if they started being, if they opened up drafts and they did the same mistakes versus BDS, maybe then they lose to BDS. It just looked like Vitality was completely lifeless. And there's just a huge difference between teams that figure out what their strengths and weaknesses are and the teams that don't. I mean, when you look at Vitality, how could you ever come to the conclusion that those drafts would be the best for your players? You have fucking Bo on your team, and like you're playing Maokai every game.
You would almost think they let the opponent make the draft, because think about this. Remember what the complaint we had last split was before they got upset. It's like, top side of the map's great, bot side shit. You ruined the whole top side of the map in these drafts. Like, you took Photon, a player that, in my opinion, almost never looked bad, and he looked the worst he has ever looked in LEC. In fact, he actually looked dominant. He didn't even play some of these champions. It was mental. Like, I can't understand it as well, because he has, as far as I can tell, he has a champion Ocean. And then the same thing with Bo. Mate, they turned Bo into the joke. Like, all those people flaming him when it was last split. The joke is, it's this split when he played shit. Now, mate, he looked terrible. He looked terrible. Well,
I mean,
I agree. But it's not even just the players play. What is the coach doing putting them on those champions, mate? Like, I'd be going the other way. I'd be going to just comfort, you know.
It's funny because this is like the one time in Upset's career where you get into the crucial moments that the team is not playing through Upset.
Yeah.
And when I watch it, I'm like, they should have just played like more bot side and played through Upset. Also, I mean,
even though every dumbass fan, you know this, they must be in your chat, Dom. Every dumbass fan still has that take about Upset where they go, the thing with Upset is you can only play through him and then you don't win. And they just leave it like that. They don't add in, like, you know, because in the other lanes you've got like Abadak. They don't say that. They just make it sound like he had fucking like. They make it sound, bro, like he had primed the shy rookie, but then he was like, you know what? Give it all to me, Upset, and then I'm just gonna lose. Like, because the joke is they didn't even do that, like you say. They had some. Mate, for real, my only speculation is this. I actually feel like something happened to Vitality and Scrims in that group stage, mate. Because as soon as they got to the playoffs, they were just so fucking whack, even in draft, mate. Like, whatever conception they had of their team is just gone.
Yep.
Like if we went the other way, if we did our cynical drafting, but we cynically drafted for Vitality, look, I'm not saying they'd win all the games, but they'd be in them. They'd have a chance to.
Yeah, it's so weird. What's so strange about Vitality is they just look like a North American team. They look like a North American super team. If you think about even when these teams started popping up in NA in like season 5, for example, the fucking Team Liquid that I was on, isn't it the same thing where like all the players, it's like, well, individually they look fine, but what the fuck are they doing together? Like they just have no synergy at all. They have no one wants to play together. They have no identity. You look at the Team Liquid roster from last year, it was the same thing. You look at this fucking Team Liquid roster this year, I mean, Vitality might as well just be the European Team Liquid. They might as well just be European Team Liquid with the way that they construct rosters and just the way that the teams decide on play. And what's so strange is there seems to be like a terrible mentality within the team when it comes to stage games. Like there's an overreaction or there's something wrong with the way that they approach stage games. Because afterwards, I'm like, wow, this team looks like shit. They must have like scrimmed like shit. And I asked some of the other teams, and apparently Vitality was like probably the second best scrim team after G2. They were just like smurfing scrims. Like other teams just couldn't fucking win a game versus them. Then they come in and they just get 0-3 and they just look horrible.
By the way,
they get 0-3 by BDS, look horrible.
If people don't know, he actually did fair play follow up and Romain did show that actually apparently it was the same thing. G2 was still cracked in scrims and everyone was still cancelling. So here's my obvious question to Romain and the coaching staff of Vitality. If you win everybody scrim, just maybe draft some of the stuff from the scrims. Like, what? It's like they go like, right, well, we've won all the scrims, but here's the thing, Dom. They'd expect us to draft this. We got 700 IQ, underwater, 70 Jenga. Let's tell you what, draft some shit we don't even play, because I don't know what they were doing in these playoffs. I'm with you as well, by the way. I also think G2 just chose to almost lose that series. Like, it's so bizarre to me. So
I feel like it's like they played the scrims and they have the results from the scrims. They have like all the stats, but they don't watch the scrims at all. So they just like have the stats and they're like, we win on everything. So I guess we could just draft anything. Like it's just one of those types of things instead of actually honing down what is our strength as a team. Like what you want to do is you want to find the players that have strengths that will complement other players on your team's weaknesses. That's the whole fucking puzzle you're trying to put together. So if Bo actually sucks on Maokai, which he looks like he just fucking sucks on Maokai, like he just can't make it work, right? If Bo sucks on Maokai, then set him up to play something else. If you need to play a slightly worse bot lane and you need to play like a tank support or you need to like draft a Braum in a not ideal Braum situation in order to get Bo a good Kindred game or something like that, just do that. Like you need to be enabling the players that are good on your team. And I feel like the way that the team ended up functioning towards the end didn't make any sense to me. I feel like Perks should be the guy that's playing utility. He shouldn't be the guy on Tristana. He should be the guy that's playing Lissandra and just these like brain dead, like, easy setup champions. And then Bo should be on these fucking carries that he could take over the whole game with. And it should be like Viego Lissandra, get Bo a reset and just watch him mechanically take over a fight. That's what I would think would be a better style, just thinking about what Vitality is as a team. But it's like they don't do any of that. They decided that their player that seems to have the worst communication with his lanes is the utility player. And then the players that like know the game extremely well will be the carries. I just don't understand it.
I know what you mean, because I do feel like for Perks, I almost feel like the comparisons with Caps, like Perks himself gets into that shit because it's like he still seems to think that he has to like be the carry of the game from lane or something, which is like, if anything, the thing I love about Perks in the modern day is I put him more like in the Faker Xiaohu class, Dom, where like what I love about them is they don't have to carry from lane. In fact, their whole shit is like, I'm going to play the pick that makes sense for my team, and then I'm going to find a late game moment where I'm going to apply all this absurd experience I have and get a flank or a pick or a catch or help a teammate. Like, you don't need that. Like, as you say, you could do that on Alessandra. You could do that on one of these champions. Or Annie even. You could just be on some shit like that. You don't have to be on the fucking Tristana and try and carry the game. Yeah. You don't have to be Caps, mate.
Well, when you think about when Vitality was at their best, right? Their strategy was to have these setup champions mid. So they would play things like Annie mid, and then in previous splits, they would just play whatever was in the meta that Perks would be able to work with his jungler on. So it was a Zero at a point, because a Zero at post 6, you can like shuffle the guy and, you know, get a kill. And then they would have Photon be weak side perma. They would never visit Photon's lane. They'd be like, all right, you take your Gwen, your Cassante, whatever, your Gnar. You play up there, you just do your own thing, and we're going to like play heavily through mid jungle. That was their whole identity. That's what they were winning on. And when you look at these finals, it was the opposite. It was like, we're going to play, you know, these carry tops. Bo's going to try to gank top. Mid never gets any resources. I think Perks, like, look, obviously the whole team is not playing well, but I think Perks gets like such an unfair amount of criticism in these games, because if you watch the games, Hilly is mid the entire fucking game. Hilly's mid from like level 2 to level fucking 6. And when I see this happen, I'm like, what is happening bot lane? How does Hilly get to move on every single wave? So when you're playing Tristana and you can't pressure, like you stack a wave and you can't pressure, and the TF just gets the free farm it, and then you go back into the lane, like you get chased around, you miss experience, you come back, and you have to like restabilize the lane, get yourself into another advantageous position, and then try to exploit it again. Like, the TF is just going to be able to start porting around the map. He's just going to have these windows where he can act. And I don't know why all the pressure just gets to be relieved from mid lane perma. So I don't know what is happening in the bot lane where Hilly can move all the time, but it makes like no sense to me. It makes no sense that they're allowed to play, that Badlands was allowed to have pressure in as many lanes as they did. Like, I just don't understand how the map can work like that. What are these bot matchups? These bot matchups don't look unplayable. So how does Hilly get to be mid on every wave?
Here's the question then, Dom. So I know, because I've seen you, there was a clip that you were talked about this already. Obviously, the rumor in Europe is there's going to be this crazy like support swap where not only is Vulcan going to come and join the league, but then there's going to be a bunch of like, this guy goes to this team, then this guy, and then they pick this bit, right? So the question is, do Vitality, do you think, replace Carzzy? And if so, is that enough? Because to me, like, he wasn't bad, but there's another thing I would try. Because the thing with super teams as well is this. I hate it when people have super teams, Dom, and they try one variation and then scrap the whole team. Because in my opinion, you've got the reason it's a super team is you've got a bunch of really good players. Even changing one player can change the entire dynamic. We already saw that with Upset, but I feel like if you got the right support in here, that's an interesting team immediately. So what do you think on that angle?
I mean, it just depends on who you can get and what the player strength is going to be. I still don't know who Carzzy is, because when I watch him play, I just don't feel like he's the same player that he was before. I don't know if he's just really uncomfortable within the team, but he used to be the guy that was like able to outperform Hillsong in some of these big moments. Like he was the guy that when he was like peaking in like 2021, or when he was playing really well, he was more active on the map. He was able to do things that, you know, now I don't know if it's because, you know, Upset wants him in lane more, but Upset played with Hilly too. So I don't know what the issue is, why they don't synergize so well. But when you just look at bot lane, it just doesn't look like they have any ability to play together. They don't make each other better in any way. They kind of just exist bot lane, like even in farm versus Carzzy, and then they show up to team fights and they're like misplaying some of the team fights. So it's very weird to see how they play. I think that it's one of those situations where the team is playing so bad that, like, because this is what everyone wants to do. Everyone wants to just say Upset is bad, Perks is bad, Bo is bad, Photon. Well, if they're all fucking bad and they ended up fucking third place, then holy shit, your region sucks. Then your region just fucking sucks. Like, you should just stop watching it. Like, that's my take there. So clearly not all the players are fucking bad. They play bad together. So what is the reason they're playing bad together? That's what you have to fucking, that's what you need to
when you say it like that, I hadn't thought you actually have checkbaited them there, Dom. Because here's the dumbest thing they do with Vitality, because it is kind of a super team. You're right. In a normal team, like think about me. Normally what I do is there'll be a really good Fnatic team where almost everyone's good. And then I'll pick Rekkles and go, he isn't that good. But part of how I infer he isn't that good, guys, is I say stuff like, he has like prime Hillsong. Like, what the fuck? He has like, you know, caps mid or expect. I don't won't go. He sucks, but all his teammates suck as well. But that means he sucks more. Because think about it, right? How simultaneously, because they do this, Tom, right? Because they say we overrated Bo, they're desperate for Bo to be shit in every game. Perks, they've been saying is shit for literally 3 straight years now. That's not a joke. 3 straight years, guys. And then Upset, they obviously hate on him anyway from the other teams. They all play the same team. Guys, if they're all shit, then like, first of all, you guys must just be so upset because the entire world of League must just seem so unfair. Everyone's overrating all these players. But then as Dom says, how are they ever in the position they're in? Like, how are they winning a million scrims? How are they a top team? How are they in a position like this? Yeah, they should be terrible by that logic. They should be like 8th place or something, 7th place, right? Doesn't really make sense, does it? Someone's got to be good at some point, guys. Here's the thing. At least pick one player to hate. You can't hate 3 out of 5 and then say the team's totally shit. Like, in that case, someone's carrying.
They don't even like the other players, though. They don't even think like Kaiser is good. Like, they just think that Bo, Upset, and Perks are all bad. I mean, Photon had a horrible series. Photon had a really, really terrible series, but it's just not his style also. Like, I don't know where the Rumble
I've never seen him play like that, though, dude. That's the thing. The difference is that one, because of how he's played in all the other games for the rest of this split and last split, I'll easily run that back with him, mate. Like, I don't look at that guy. He's doomed. Like, I just think that was just the weirdest series I've ever seen him play, mate. It didn't look like the same player to me.
Yeah, it was extremely strange. I don't know. Even the way the series started off was so strange. Like, Bo is just invading his Maokai. Like, like in theory, you could logic yourself into that invade being good, where you're like, oh, well, you had mid prio and bot prio. So generally when you have mid prio and bot prio, it's fine to invade. But like, it's just a solo queue invade where you know that, okay, yeah, I mean, we have prio, but the other guy can get here first. Like, prio doesn't mean you're like, if you have prio and your blue side and your support is at their turret, unless your support can literally walk through the fucking turret, the other enemy support is closer to you on the map. He can just walk through his tri-bush and just come to you. And especially when you consider the champions that you're playing there, where I believe you're on Nami, you have Nami on your team, and the other guy is Nautilus. Like, that is the situation that Nautilus wants. So if anything, all you're doing there is you're like throwing a couple saplings, you're finding where the enemy jungler is, and then you're just leaving and continuing to farm. You're just allowing your team to get vision of the enemy jungler so you know where he is, so that your team can keep on playing in the abusive manner they want to play with Lucian, Nami, and all this type of stuff. These are the things that you'd expect, but then it becomes a fight to the death. And then, like, even the fight, the synergy on the fight is terrible because Bo actually he Maokai Qs the Vi out of the poison. And there was a bunch of mechanical misplays there, right? But the fact that Bo knocked them out of the poison means that they don't even trade. If he didn't knock him out of the poison, Elyoya just dies there. And it's like 1 for 1. People lose summoners. It's not good for your game, but at least the situation is somewhat stabilized. Then again, if Mad Lions just chained the, Vi flash Q into the charm, then Bo probably insta-dies before getting Aftershock. I mean, the mechanics of it were just bad. But watching that situation, it was just bad on all fronts. And I feel like that the way that they started the series was it just put you in such a weird mindset. You're like, what the fuck are they doing? Then they have that horrible first game. Perks dies like 9 times in the game. He's just getting Vi ulted on cooldown. It was extremely weird to watch.
You think Bo is a bit brain dead? Because sometimes, like, he can be genius, but sometimes it looks like he just doesn't say no to any play, mate. He just goes for it.
No, I don't think he's brain dead. I think that he's actually like.
What do you think his
issue
mechanics
is? Are good. I think his issue is that he's like trying to cosplay like a jungler that he thinks his teammates want to like play with. I think that he's doing things that like he thinks other people want him to do, but in reality they would just want him to perform fucking well. So like he's walking into the enemy jungle trying to provide like vision for like on the enemy jungle, but like I don't feel like he should do. I think he should literally like play like solo queue. Like if you guys died a bot gank, then I'm gonna take his fucking top side and I'm just gonna be really strong in the game. Like I think that he should make all the decisions that he makes in solo queue in competitive. I don't think the game is as different as they're trying to make it seem.
I know what you mean, because if people don't know, beyond rare examples, and by the way, you'll notice actually these people tend to even have problems back in Korea, like the piglets of the world. If you're not one of those like unusual Koreans, by default, Asian players I've found, when they come to the West, because they're used to the ID, supposed to be polite, they will be too accommodating sometimes in that sense. Like I've heard of tons of stories of Koreans that were imports, like doing what you're saying. Like the coach finds out towards the end of the split, like, wait a minute, you didn't want to play like this ever. And he's like, no, not really. I thought I thought that was my job to do that because you guys asked. And it's like, no, we were just having a discussion and like draft. You could have pushed back and said like, no, like, but the players like trying to be too accommodating in a way. I almost feel like some of that's bore because like, put it this way, we gave him props when he played that one good Maokai game like last split, but it's clearly not his fucking champion style, is it? Like, as you say, if this guy's in solo queue, he just picks all the aggro shit and just dominates. Like, why not play it now?
He played it way better the first time that they played Mad Lions. And that's what makes Vitality this feel like such a choke from them, is that they were better than Mad Lions all year, like up until this point. Like every time they played Mad, they just had Mad Lions number. Mad didn't really have a good chance to win any of these games that they played the first 4 times they met. So it's a team that you've beat over and over again, and you don't need to be like someone else in order to beat them. Just play your own fucking game. Just play your own game. You don't need to do all this stuff that is just like, that's a way to enable good leaders. If you have a bad jungler, that's what you do, is you have the enemy jungler just go find the other jungler and just stare at him and throw saplings and be like, oh, you can't play the game, I can't play the game. Nice, 1 for 1, both the junglers are out and our lanes are just gonna win.
Yes,
which was kind of the strategy earlier with a lot of the picks that people were playing when people were playing all this Jace mid and things like this. Sure, I mean, I get that's a viable way to play League of Legends, but I just think in general now you're just taking away from what your biggest strength should be, which is that your jungler like knows how to fucking get ahead. Like your jungler knows how to get ahead, and the other players are generally, outside of Perks, I think the other players are actually really good around playing, are really good at playing around the enemy jungler. So I just don't think that it makes sense. Perks does die to shit that he shouldn't die to, but that can't gaslight you as a jungler into like forcing you to do things that are not normal because you're so scared your player's gonna die. If Perks fucking is gonna int the whole series, if he's gonna die to every fucking gank, then you're just gonna lose. Like, just lose like that, but at least have some strength anywhere instead of trying to cover this flaw by walking and finding the enemy jungler every single time you can see him.
Also, Perks has always been a fucking mid lane that was susceptible to ganks. It's just his style. Like, so it's not even that big a deal. Like I say, his whole style's ain't come back late anyway. By the way, I actually had some info I've got for you. A little bit of homework I've done here, Dom, which is, and by the way, they all do this. I saw Perks has done this in the past on some Croatian podcast. What you need to do if you want the real juice, Dom, is this. You have to wait till the player goes back to their home country and goes on a podcast in their language. Because since they know almost no one's going to hear it and see it, right? They all get... Did you hear about this? Where Carzzy went on a Czech podcast or something and told a bunch of opinions. And spoiler, as imagined, they're 10 times spicier than anything you'll see on broadcast or to some like LEC reports. I've got some quotes for you here, right? Sure. One question is, they say Nightshare, so the coach of Fnatic, ranked his ADC, so Rekkles, as the 5th or 6th best. What do you say to that? Do you have your own ranking or are you scared? Right? This is Carzzy's response. Just listen, guys. He goes, oh, to me, he was the worst one. But then I realized Jack Spectre is in the league as well. So I have him 9th. So he even shits on Rekkles and then also goes, I think I'll just get a Jack Spectre burn in here. Brings that in. No, it's brilliant, isn't it? And then later on, there's another one, right? Where, let me see what it says.
What the fuck?
Basically, here's what's mad. I'll complete it for you. Here's what's mad. He actually thinks that Fnatic should have played to like Oscarinin, who's really good, he thinks, at the top side. And that actually the problem is that Rekkles is whack, essentially. Like, isn't that wild, mate? He thinks they have the worst bot lane Fnatic in the league.
I mean, Jesus.
Carzzy,
where did you find this? When was this?
I'll have to find it for you. I'll send you the link later. I don't actually have the link myself. Some fan sent me like a translation of the juicy parts because, like I said, it's in Czech or something, so I couldn't have never figured it out myself. Yeah. It's fucking mad spicy though, isn't it?
I'm surprised that isn't all over Reddit. Like,
you would think so, but I think it's just too niche. I don't think anyone got it.
Damn.
Remember, you have to understand, Tom, when someone around the world says something negative about Rekkles, it's like fucking Game of Thrones. Like someone sends a pigeon to me immediately, like, fly. And it just comes to my like fucking thing. What's that? All right. What's that? Carzzy said, what about Rekkles? Like, it comes straight to me.
Bring this up on a talk show.
Exactly. But this way, it's a bit like, spoiler, if anyone's seen all the stuff that Richard's now doing that series of more stuff about evil geniuses. This is one of the things, I don't know if you know this, Dom, but in the modern day, here's the real way you know who the legit journalists are, who aren't. In the modern day, the actual people like me and Richard, dude, people just bring the info to us. We don't even go like, right, what's out there? I'm gonna show. They just come and go, here's all my info. So like that story Richard's just published now, by the way, that's like part 1 because someone just basically, after that Danny EG stuff gave me and Richard like the mega download of like fucking Slack group messages. Oh, mate, it was insane how much of the problem is I wasn't that interested in because I was only really interested in the Danny story. I don't want to reveal every aspect of the evil genius. So Richard's doing that anyway. But my point is, that's what it's like. So what's mad about this angle here is one, I told gay guys, you could even just tell if you just look at him. Carzzy in his own way is mad cocky, which is bizarre to me because like, bro, how many games have you lost? And also, spoiler, you've now won 3 LEC titles as possibly the worst player on the team. Like, I don't want to hear it, but it's true, isn't it? Right? Of all the of every player with 3 LEC titles, is he not the worst? He must be, surely. Who even has 3? 3's a lot, dude. Remember, my boy Forgiven never even made a final. Upset has 0 titles. Carzzy has 3. He has 3 of these motherfuckers.
I was gonna say Armut is the worst player on the team in the first 2, but like, now if you put it in the category of if you put it in the category of 3 finals,
I'll give you that. Maybe Armut was on the 2 that they won that year. I'll give you that one. Yeah.
Who's won 3? I need to see a list of people that have won 3.
It's only people in Fnatic and G2 basically, in it. So there's not that many. It's like Yellow Star, Expected, Stars, Perks. Some pretty good names. That's the problem. There's not many names of won 3, mate. 3 is a crazy amount. I don't think people understand how many that is. Europe as well. Remember, Europe, we very rarely have fluke winners like this. Normally in Europe, it's the boring winners. It's always the top team that wins, isn't it?
I mean, also the discussion that people are going to have to start having is that these splits kind of count less than like what previous splits did, because there was just 2 a year, and now there's 3 a year, and now it's like, can you be insane for like a 6-week period? And I think we're going to start seeing more teams like BDS just go on a run and actually perform and,
it's like you say,
win a title.
Part of the reason the whiplash is so crazy is because, dude, like this split was the best one ever. The difference between groups and playoffs was like the opposite. It's like the standings flipped upside down. Like, think about it. BDS and Vitality were the best of groups, guys. Like, BDS not only looked shit in the final, but then Vitality absolutely looked terrible in the playoffs. So, like, yeah, it's because it's only a week. Like, we're still acting like we're in the 9 weeks into 2 weeks and 3 weeks of playoffs. Like, we're not. Like, essentially, we just had 2 splits in the space of 1. You're right. It's more like half a split. Yeah, that's what you should almost even do. Maybe it's half a title then. You know what I mean? Because it should be something. It can't be nothing, can it? But I agree. It's not like an old full title from a spring split, is it?
I mean, it definitely felt harder to win a spring split before than this spring split, because this is essentially you like turn up you go from 4th to 1st on 1 weekend. That's it.
Yep.
Where it felt like before you were doing this whole thing where you would have that winner bracket final, or if you came from like the losers bracket in the best of 5s, you'd have to go through the fucking gauntlet. You wouldn't just show up and play 3 best of 5s in a weekend and then just win all of them and win a title. So it's harder to maintain that like best team in EU status for a 3-4 month period than it is to maintain it for like 6 weeks.
Also, the other thing as well, I have to say, is this, right? We didn't bring this up at all when we had that discussion last week, because I was too busy sort of reveling in how ridiculous that Rekkles flash is. Dude, it's worse. I know you were doing the game live, because I actually linked to your clip, because your clip actually shows how outrageous the LEC broadcast talent is, right? Anyone who's seen this year knows they are trying this split to get Rekkles on every single show. Has anyone noticed that? If he's not playing, he's fucking just a guest every time. He's on all the branding. Every time the Fnatic plays, by the way, his photo, they implied he was the king of the league, remember, when he came at the beginning. Like, mate, they're almost like protecting this motherfucker. Go watch the clip on the real broadcast, Dom. It's mental. When Rekkles does that fail flash, they don't say his name or cast him dying at all.
I said it on my screen.
Even the fucking play-by-play commentator says nothing. He doesn't even say his name. He just waits, and then a second later he says something like the top laner or something like. It's so insane, Dom. When you watch it, you would really believe, this is going to be a mad example, whatever, you would believe that Rekkles was fucking Stalin, and then they were all just like, what do you mean Stalin died? Nothing happened to Comrade Stalin. Like, what? Dude, you would think he owned the LEC or something? This is crazy. Like, I was giving a ridiculous example there. Obviously
Reckless
the point is, it has to be someone where everyone's so scared to ever mention that he did it wrong. Like, bro, what was that? Like, they in live, real-time memory hold him doing one of the worst fails of his career. That, by the way, remember, would have eliminated the team that now won the championship. That play alone is this team is out. Mad Lions goes out 8th place if that result happened. How can everyone just memory hold this? I'm not even flaming casters totally, but like not even one of you got it. No one mentioned it. What? That's crazy to me, dude. That's crazy. Yeah.
I mean, it was tough. I mean, it felt like the game was over, but I mean, the way
I think it was as well. Let's be real. It was. Come on.
It was completely over. He just needed to stand not in melee range of the Nexus. He has a ranged auto attack. I don't know why he's dry humping the Nexus, but I mean, that's the reason why he had to flash. Like, maybe his flash was fine if you teleported him into the position where he's on top of the Jinx traps. Like, if you just put him there and you're like, you have to flash right now. You
had to do it, exactly.
Yeah.
But because, by the way, the joke is even though obviously they wouldn't do it like your start, 'cause it's not really professional. Your cast is more like what I was thinking, Tom. When the whole time you're like, what's it? That's like what I was like. So that's why when they were just not reacting, I'm like, is he fucking, do they all owe him money or something? What's going on here? Why is no one allowed to say that he just died? Like, what?
Yeah. I was pretty shocked. I remember I brought that up with the people that I was viewing with, and they're like, no, it couldn't be that. I was like, are they just not talking about it because it's Rekkles? That was my first
it feels like
my first reaction. Because I was thinking the other way, right? Let's say Carzzy did that. It feels like for some reason the casters have no problems flaming Carzzy. If Carzzy does something stupid, all the casters will be like, "Oh, fucking Carzzy! What was Carzzy doing here?" When Rekkles does something, they're like, "No." You know, because maybe it's something about their personalities. Like Carzzy's the guy you can banter with. Like I could fucking like send Carzzy a message saying like, "Hey, you played like shit, but you're like in these games, but you fucking won. Good job." And something, and he would just send me some flame back. You know, like he's got more of that like spicy personality where it seems like he could like take it and dish it out and all that stuff. And Rekkles is more like he doesn't insult anyone and he doesn't want to be insulted. So maybe that's part of it. But yeah, I try to think about if that was an other AD carry, how would the reaction be? And I don't think that they would give him a pass like that.
I mean, I'll even throw this in. They had him on the show, guys, the very next time there was a show. They had Rekkles as the guest on the post-game lobby thing and didn't even reference it. How he went out of the fucking tournament. Like, even as just a fucking banter, you throw it in there, you know, like, you could even have told him beforehand, we're going to joke, you know, we'll make a stupid joke about the Nexus or something, and then we'll be here, you know, like, they didn't even mention it, they just memory hold the whole thing. Like, as far as I can tell, we're just supposed to pretend, you know, yada, yada, yada. Fnatic made the groups, and then they were just out, Dom, and then here's Rekkles to commentate, like,
actually, it was an overperformance. No one thought they would do anything. They actually made it. They had competitive games.
It's just wild, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really crazy to think about.
Because the problem is that one will haunt me forever, Dom. Not only because it was an insane fail by Rekkles that no one commented on, but because the entire standings change if that one hit just happens. Like, I think it was two hits technically. Dude, think about it. Nomad Lions win, which means, by the way, it's probably actually like Astralis that plays G2, which means that, you know what I mean? Like the whole standings probably change. Every standing probably change except maybe BDS second. That's about it. I think everyone else, I'm with you, probably G2 wins the league, mate. Why wouldn't they?
Yep. I would think G2 would just beat Vitality, and then, I mean, BDS versus G2 would just come down to like if they draft well into BDS. But I've always felt like G2 has played pretty well into BDS though. Like if you've looked at those other games, even though like BDS is thrown to G2, I always felt like BDS has this like uncomfortable feeling when they play against G2. Like they respect them a lot, and it's just hard for them to win even when they're in winning positions compared to like other teams. But one thing I was gonna say is, I see you always end up flaming Rekkles, but Rekkles actually made the final 2 splits in a row now. He made it in Malma, and then he's made it here as well. And I just feel like you're memory holding this one. You're memory holding this. Like he's attending every single final. Like what's wrong with it?
That actually is what I used to, just to be an arsehole, to banter with CSGO pros. I was like, mate, you're talking shit like you're some legend. I'm in every final, bro. I used to do the same shit joke myself. It's whatever, innit? The only problem I have is this, is I actually just think it's also sad because if you can never critique Rekkles, it also means none of his teams ever make sense anymore. Like, put it this way, he definitely was better this split than last split, obviously. But that team is still in so much trouble, mate. I know they could have beat Mad Lions here. I think they would have lost to Astralis. Even if they beat Astralis, they definitely would have lost to G2. Like, this team is still so capped to me. And quite frankly, here's the thing that's disturbing. They don't seem to be one of the teams I'm hearing the rumours about. Like, I'm not hearing interest in, but this player would go over there. I even wondered it in that sense, by the way, because I basically heard straight up that, like, one of the reasons why they ended up with night shares, a lot of people probably didn't want to coach this team who were big name coaches who could have come in to rescue it. I get the vibe now. Sadly, we're at the point that I thought we were at a couple of years ago, but they turned the corner. It feels like no one wants to join Fnatic. It's become one of those cursed dogs, Tom. Like, no one wants to go and resurrect the team. They'll join if it's a top team again, maybe, but no one wants to be the one that fixes it, as it were. Because you see, even though now they've sort of maybe fixed some of the internal culture, it's not a good team still, mate. It's still a very flawed squad. You know? Yeah,
definitely. I think the weird thing here is that they actually seem to vibe together pretty well. Like the team seemed to get along. Like I feel you can judge how a team's environment is by just looking at Rekkles. Like when he's smiling and like he like, you know, is going up to his teammates after the game and he like is excited to talk to them, it feels like, oh, okay, well, like that team is functioning. And I don't know if they believe in like the power of friendship, so to speak, the fact that they're actually a unit now where they've had so many splits where even when they were performing well, it felt like they're individual players that maybe they think that now this chemistry that the roster has just as people gives them the ability to improve more. So who knows?
What about all right, what about if we just speculate a little bit about the MSI then? So obviously the main thing here is this. This is an angle, by the way, that I think is whack as fuck. Do you know that take that people had, Dom, where once Mad Lions actually beat Vitality and there was a chance if they won the final, they would go to MSI again, you know, and all that jazz. You know, that whole narrative, which we were all doing justifiably, where before they beat G2, the whole narrative was like, oh, it sucks because now Mad Lions is going to go to MSI, but they don't deserve to, and they'll make an embarrassment out of Europe. Dude, what was that take that I swear everyone on the internet had the take on this day, by the way. They all reversed it. They were like, everyone read it was like, lol, now it's G2's going to humiliate everyone. It's like, how are these even comparable scenarios? Yeah. G2 has like mega veteran international players. Like they have, you know, the joke is this. G2, by the way, actually played fairly bad and still almost won that series and could have won the split. If anything, that's them at a low. And as I say, all those players you'd expect to be pretty good, except Broken Blades had his issues, and Yike obviously hasn't played. Aside from that, they're all veterans. Like everyone else, Mickey X has won everything, mate. Like fucking Caps, Hans Sam has been loads. I would actually expect they'll be better when they go to MSI. If anything, that is the team you still want to play from Europe. Like, what was that take, dude, of like, no, that they're the new Mad Lions? Like, what are you talking about? That's such a whack take, dude.
Well, number one, like you have a team that actually won a split, right? Like in the Mad Lion scenario, they would have got a fourth and they would have limped into a fourth. Yep. Like limping into a fourth is different than and you know the nightmare scenario was that Mad Lions also looked bad against G2. They get like 3-0'd by G2. G2 just shuts on them, which looked like it was going to happen, right?
Yeah.
And then they end up going to an international tournament because they had essentially a couple good best of 5 wins in spring. In winter when the teams are like not playing close to their level. So I think that's an issue, number one. But then number two, like when you look at the way G2 was playing, it felt like G2 probably is the second best team in Europe. Like I would have taken if G2 and BDS played a best of 5 right now for a slot in MSI, I would take G2, especially if they did it the way that people are asking them to do it, where if there was a best of 5 between the two teams with the most points, I don't even know if it would have been BDS if they get second. I'm not sure exactly how the points line up. But if they do play that best of 5, it would be done after the finals, obviously, because they need to know where the points are. And especially after seeing how hard BDS got exposed in draft, I feel like it'd be very easy.
The same approach, right? I see.
I think that now when somebody sees that draft work to that degree, I think that then it becomes so much easier to just copy the same thing and have similar results. So I feel like G2 probably is the second best team in Europe, and that's why it feels a lot better than if, you know, BDS played a competitive final versus G2. If BDS played the same final versus G2 and G2 won and Mad Lions goes instead of BDS, that would feel significantly worse given the trajectories of the two teams. And I mean, you got to remember, like G2 was the best team in Europe for, you know, probably over half the time that we've played, if you consider like winter and spring. So them going, it obviously feels different. I did do a joke tweet though, where I was like the 4th best team and the best team going as everyone expected, you know, like I did the reverse, but
it's just a meme though. It's just a meme. It's just a harmless meme. It's all good. Because that's the other thing I think so stupid. People are still doing that thing, Dom, where they just take how someone played domestically and imagine that you can just pick them up and drop them in MSI and they'll play identically against. Like one of the main reasons why actually people were justified to worry about Mad Lions is Mad Lions has a bunch of players that have chalked it nationally. Yeah, I'm scared about that, mate. It's not about their team play. The team play is good, like you say. They got the draft together. They have some good play. That's why actually, even though here's the problem: if we had a different sort of format, I'm with you. If BDS don't win the split, then yeah, they probably would lose to G2. But bear in mind, BDS could have won this split. If BDS went to MSI, like on paper, they would be the best European team, but I think that team would have been brutalized by MSI. I think the MSI teams would wreck that squad, mate. I think you would see all these flaws. I also think people would just play worse individually. People are forgetting that like the pressure is different when you go to those international tournaments, especially if you're a rookie, mate. Like, how the fuck would Adam handle that pressure? Come on. Because remember, that Worlds he went to was the one where it didn't count. Like, you didn't have the real team. No one flamed you. And you also had that drama to distract you. If he went this time, he would just get murked, mate. Think about the top laners that are going, mate. 369 would put this fucking guy in a body bag. It'd be outrageous.
369 is actually the worst matchup for Adam. It wouldn't actually be Bin like most people think, because Bin is good at like stomping somebody 1v1, but I feel like Adam is actually kind of good at fighting with his champion.
So surely he's used to playing against, yeah.
He wants you to fight. What he doesn't want is he doesn't want you to do the fucking 369 where he's just like playing waves well, and then he's like grouping with his team on really intelligent timings, and he team fights really well. Yep. So I think that would be a rough one. Maybe he could win. I mean, I guess the best two would be Thorin and Bin, maybe, because Thorin I feel like can randomly just throw the lane. Like he has the most potential.
He could get kills on Thorin for sure.
I mean, Thorin will just kill himself, right? Like that's the thing, is he'll just walk into the lane and be like, I want to die right now. Cassante versus Sion, yep, I'm just dead. I feel like Zeus and 369 would just they would just beat this guy to death.
What is your actual expectation, by the way, for Europe in that sense? Like how is there a chance for like a miracle run at MSI? Is there a certain opponent you want to see some of these teams play? Like what would be a great matchup for you? What would be a fun game? Because in theory, we might get to see them all. Like the way the bracket works, we're going to get to see some pretty good games, I hope.
I think it's really tough to make top four. It's so hard to watch LEC and LCS right now, and then also watch Asian regions, and then think that like maybe BLG could lose if one of the teams gets really hot and BLG implodes, because BLG has been extremely streaky. I mean, I don't think T1, Genji, or JDG is going to be losing to Europe or...
No, I don't think they even can from just a macro perspective, mate. Like, they could even be behind in these games and win, you know. Like, I could see... Here's the problem. This is where I think, like, people are also forgetting the format, Dom. Here's the key thing I need fans to understand who are Western fans. You know where everyone laughed every year where I overhype fucking top esports and night? Here's the problem, guys. What fucked them up every time was BO1s and bullshit like that. If they just start in BO5s, which is where they're going to be, you could win a game off JDG, of course. They can throw. Those players are just too fucking good. You won't beat them in a best of 5. You can't. Like, I don't even care if G2 players peaks here. There's no League of Legends I can see them playing where they can beat a team like that, mate. Like, just the power of the players. Like, yeah, mate, when they get their power picks, they're unbeatable almost.
The hard part is that teams like JDG, they're just so good at like mid-game team fighting that your early advantage like doesn't mean that much if you're not really, really good at like the Drake setups and stuff like that. I mean, we saw like JDG's whole identity last year was getting the shit beat out of them by top esports for like 15 minutes and showing up to a Drake fight down like 4K gold and just winning it. So I think it's really, really tough. This MSI is really hard for Western teams. I mean, especially because EU, they finished so late. I think that's a thing that Yamato has nailed when I talked to him, was the schedule. The fact that they just finished finals this last weekend, and in 6 days MSI starts, is ridiculous. Like that. Also,
wasn't there something mad? Like Europe's on a different patch than MSI, so when you playing the same patch, that's even worse, isn't it? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, that's my whole point. Is that like other teams have been scrimming. Like when were the finals of LPL were
it's like a week and a half ago or something. Yeah,
the 15th. So it's a week and a half. So they get an extra full week of practicing on the patch for the teams that are already better. And the fact that it's in Europe is kind of bad for European teams, because the Asian teams are just not going to show up until like they're just going to come here, beat some ass, and then go back. They're going to be here they're going to be in Europe for the least amount of time possible. So I don't know. I think that the logistics are kind of fucked for EU this time, as well as just the fact that there's no team that's really dominant in Europe, and it depends. Like obviously parity is good for a region, but I just don't believe that the level, when I'm seeing the mistakes that I see in Europe, there's just a different level of mistakes that are consistently happening. And I don't know if these can be fixed in like 10 days. You know, even if a team gets hot, even if Mad Lions is playing well right now, there's still a lot of like flaws in their game. You can't have games in a best of 5 versus JDG, T1, Genji, where you like are ahead in the mid to late game and you just throw with Ezreal. You're just not going to win that series, right? Like they're going to be able to challenge you in the other games enough to just compensate for any bad early games they have, and they're going to adapt throughout the series. So I'm a little bit worried for this one.
Right, obviously, like I alluded to before, there are going to be some roster moves before the next split in LEC. But let's imagine, because we don't know technically all of them yet, if no roster moves happen, Dom, will you double down on Vitality again? Will you have them as like a top 2 or 3 team? Will you have them as a team that can win? Because I don't give a fuck, mate. You know me. I'm a ride or die, mate. I'm just going to go again. I don't give a fuck. I'm reloading up, especially because here's the key thing, Dom. I'm not an idiot. If some other team comes along, like if Bad Lions, by the way, won, but they were awesome, Obviously, I would put them over Mad Victor. The problem is, I think Mad Lions hit a crazy streak. I think the coaching staff won half the games for them. I think they found a couple of things at the end of the split. Like if they lose that game to Fnatic, guys, they don't do any of these figures out. There aren't all these drafts. It's over. So the problem I have is this: like, I still low key, and I don't give a fuck what anyone thinks. Spiritually, think Vitality should be the second best team. I still think they should be, mate. I'm doubling down. I don't care. Where you going?
I was already off their trade after the first best of 5 versus BDS. I'm like, nope, they're mentally shattered because every time they lose like one series, it's the same thing happened in spring. They just end up just going down like the fucking.
So you're out?
They just mental boom. It's not that I'm out. I mean, I think that they could be like the third best team, but I don't think it'll be it's like this. Like, this is a top 3 finish, which is probably where, like, if I were to do predictions, I might have had them second if I were to do predictions after winter. I didn't do them, but I probably would have just had G2 first and then Vitality second. Third place, maybe.
I've got an angle for you. I've got an angle for you because here's the one other thing that I want to bring up about Vitality that no one does. You notice when people talk, they keep doing this thing, Dob. Even Monty does it, where they go like, and Vitality has all these great players over the years. They never talk about the coaching staff and the GM. They act like Vitality is an entity, and Mr. Vitality keeps getting all these players and doing all this. Here's the weirdest thing about this year, right? Obviously, the whole story, it used to be more relevant when they had Neon, was they recruited Carter from Misfits, right, to be the coach. Dude, if you actually look, because I've been doing some digging behind the scenes to try and find out what happened with some of those XL players, like what did happen to Vethio? Why was he so much worse? Like, what were they doing in Misfits differently? And when I've dug around, dude, I actually get the conclusion. I had it backwards. I thought Carter just like figured out, like, right, this is how you use this team. This is how you draft. I think actually he didn't have a choice. From the things I'm hearing behind the scenes, it sounds like Vethio plays a very specific way, and you basically have to play his style if you want him to be good. Similar things, it sounds like with Neon and what they did with Mercer and stuff. So I actually wonder if when he was in Misfits, it's more like he just only had these limited pieces, and the only way they could almost fit together was like, oh, they click together like that. But then when he comes to Vitality, like we've just discussed earlier, essentially he has all the toys in the toolkit. And he's like, right, you can do anything now, Carter. And the problem with this, mate, some of the results just from like how they've drafted, how they've looked, how the team's composed is so bizarre to me. Like, the other thing I hate about this team as well, Dom, is it feels like every stage of this split, they're reinventing themselves. Like, what? But they get to a good level, but then they reinvent themselves. Like, I feel like the coaching angle is something they have to consider too. Like, I'm not saying I know who it is or that they should fire this guy. I'm not even saying that, but something's off with like the identity of this team.
Well, I think that the thing that's the weirdest is that as soon as they lose once on their style, they completely change it. So it's not that they'll just change their style for fun. They'll play, a certain strategy. Like, for example, when they play versus Astralis, they're playing like Lee Sin and they're playing Wukong, but they're playing in a carry jungler mindset. Then they play the series versus BDS and they lose playing those champions. And they're like, fuck, utility only. It's like, there's no ability for them to like stick it out and be like, okay, well, can we work on what we're doing slightly and make it so that it's a winning game state instead of a losing game state? The way that they lost, these series, it just felt like they completely gave up on what had been working for them before. And there has to be some way that they are less reactionary towards their own losses. There has to be a way where they can cope with it better, because even in spring they had the same issue, in winter they had the same issue where they were playing a certain style and then they lost a couple games, suddenly Karthus, suddenly Nidalee, like we're just picking all these new picks. So somebody needs to be in the environment that's calming people down, that's like, hey, we can still win playing what we're doing, we just have to play a little bit better. How do we play a little bit better? What are the key things that we do in the game that change the outlook of the entire game? What can we do? I just think that they react so negatively to losses that there's such a sense of panic within the team that it makes it very hard to believe in them after they lose their first game.
What about then? Because here's where the real test is, Dom. Mad Lions just won the split, bro. We're supposed to believe they're the best team in the LEC. So here's the question, though. If I put together all your opinions, it sounds like you don't buy it. Like, for you, isn't Mad Lions sort of the fourth best team, Dom? Am I missing something? Let's be real. They come back down next split, right? They just go back to being like a good team, but not great, right?
It's really hard because I feel like Mad Lions have I think Mad Lions, they'll come down in regular season. I don't think they're they're a very dominant regular season team because they play like so fucking crazy. And when you have Hillsong on your team, like it's very hard to. You're never gonna have a perfect
lose a lot of
regular
BO1s,
season
obviously. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
You're gonna lose some BO1s.
Yeah.
But I actually like the way that they play when they get to best of fives, because Hilly is one of the supports that's willing to like really go into his bag of champions and pull out things that he knows he's good at that are going to win games that other people just hate playing against, right? He'll pick his Pyke, he'll pick his Rel. Blitzcrank is the one that he hasn't really played much in his career up until this best of five, where he's like, fuck it. Blitzcrank is good into these champions. I'm going to learn it. I have the ability to hit my hooks in lane. Boom. That's going to be our pick. I feel like they would outperform Vitality in a best of five, but they might come in. They might not be able to play Vitality in a best of five. They could easily have the same trajectory as they had this split, but that ended up being like a loss to G2 in a best of five. So I don't know if they'll place top three, even though I think they'll probably be top three.
Because my problem is I just can't buy that they can be as good as again. I know people will say, but they did second in one split and first. I get that. But part of that's also because other teams shit the bed. Like, I still can't believe how SK lost to them in the winter split. This time around, like we said, I think G2 should have beaten them in the same fucking spot. Obviously, Fnatic actually had them banged to rights and just chose to lose the game. Because if I look at the players, Dom, almost every player has flaws. Like, Nisqy still throws some of the games. Here's what's crazy. Dude, I actually think Nisqy last split was really good, but this split he was not as good, but he won the title. That just shows how weird League of Legends is. Then you have, like, fucking Chasey. As I said before, Chasey never going to look as good as he did in that final again, guys. He's a coin flip play. You flip a coin, sometimes he has a bad game. He's not a bad player. When you flip the coin and it goes the right way, he can carry, yeah. Then you have the bot lane. We just discussed it. Like, between the two of them, they just take turns to toss a BO1 every now and then, or toss one game in a series. So if you add it all together, like, and then even El Yoya can... I just get the sense he gets in a mood sometimes. Even he can have the odd bad game, even though I do think he's the best player in the team overall. Like, I just don't think the pieces, like... There's enough pieces can fail. Like, there's not a contingency plan that can cover all these pieces at once. Come on. Like, even though it's going to be the hater take, I don't give a fuck. I think Mad Lions basically benefited from the flaws of all the other teams, which, yeah, that's your job to do as a coach. Yeah, as a player, you can only beat who you play against. But I feel like the style's so flawed, though. Like, think about this. It's not even like even though Mad Lions has a coherent identity, that still includes throwing games. That's part of their identity, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
That's like their core identity includes every now and then just throw a game.
It's very hard to believe in Mad Lions because you just know that they could show up to an objective. Like, when you're watching them play, it's what I always say. It's just they're extremely anxiety producing because you're showing up and you're like, Carzzy, please don't get hit. Carzzy, like, just don't shift forward. You're playing Ezreal.
The amount of times he goes melee range in team fights and skirmishes is mental, Dom. It's mental, innit?
Yeah, which is why Jinx is a perfect pick for him.
It is, yes. That's actually an example as well, by the way, of another champion where it's like, why are you playing the meta against Carzzy when the joke is actually Jinx is probably like the second best champion you could put him on? Like, it literally fixes half of his problems, and it even means, Dom, the genius of it is that as soon as he gets the initial pick, like T1 style, you just get all the kills off that. It's going to make him look 10 times better. If you put, like you said earlier, mate, if he was playing the Zeri and the Lucian Nami, that's suicide. Like, I get depressed just when I see those drafts. I'm like, he's not going to do anything on this. And the Aphelios drafts this year. That's why I just can't believe, Dom, that these players are actually just the best players and that the coaching staff knows them all. The coaching staff figured out at the end, dude, they were putting him on Aphelios this year again. Like, he just sucks on that champion still.
I mean, it's like you can give him these picks. You can give him any champion. He just can't be a core part of the game. That's literally all I care about. If you give him whatever champion, just have him exist, do his own thing, but you never want to have all the eggs in the Carzzy basket. You always want to have a draft where he can die, but you could still win the fight. Like, if you have a carry top laner, if you have something like a Gwen, for example, and Carzzy runs it down in a team fight, maybe they overcommit, and then Carzzy ends up just like fucking dying, like, first, but Chasey just kills everyone afterwards. That's the type of situations you need him in.
By the way, though, I like the way when I said that thing earlier, like the quote of Carzzy. I still can't get over him just Jack Spector's catching us straight for no reason. Like, they only asked him like specifically about Rekkles. He's just like, yeah, well, then I remember Jack Spector exists, piece of shit. So anyway, I guess he's the second worst. Like, all right, fucking okay. Then again, though, to be fair, Carzzy, I will say this. As much as I don't know how you've stolen these championships, if you get one more, you're tied with Rekkles. That's what's fucking mental, mate. Like, I don't know if people know that Rekkles only has 4 titles. I know it seems like he should have more, but that's just how many he has, because unfortunately he had all those years where he's losing the G2. So, dude, I don't know if I'll be able to handle if Carzzy ends up with the most titles ever for an ADC in my region. Especially in a region where I've just like followed the whole career of Forgiven and Upset. They've got none between them. Like, Why? I can't handle it. I can't handle it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the crazy thing is that like, what Perks has 380 titles himself.
Oh, he does. You're right. Yes. Yeah,
he has 380 carry titles. Yeah, so Jesus, he's tied with Perks for most titles as an 80, or like, you know, on the list of most titles.
Here's the thing. I'll frame it this way to make it funnier. Because you know when everyone loves to go right up Upset's arse because he made that quote that they put in the top of the interview, Dom, where it was like, I'm too good not to have won a title. First of all, he's not wrong. He is really good. But they spin it the other way. Is Carzzy just too good to not have 3 titles? Is that really fair, is it? Come on, for fuck's sake. How's he got any? But here's the thing, though. At the same time, though, I will always say this. If you do actually win the championship, and people don't know this, I would have even done this for Nemesis. If you do win the championship, you definitely don't suck. You're definitely like a good player on some level. Or like this, they found a way to make you work in the team, or they covered your weakness. That is all part of being in a team. Like, you can't, it's not like those don't count at all. My point, and it's like what you said earlier, my point is like, it doesn't count in the sense that like, if Carzzy wants to talk shit to, like, I'll give you an example, like fucking Steelback, because he also won a title as like sort of the supportive ADC. He can talk shit to Steelback and they've got titles all day long. He can't talk shit to Upset, because the difference is, if they played the way they play around Upset, Carzzy would have 0. That's why you have to be fair, you know. It depends. It all depends what role you played in the title. That's what I think, you know.
Of course. It's the same in the NBA. That's why I get so fucking triggered when Draymond Green talks about how he has 4 titles over like a superstar, like fucking like Booker or something, where it's like, come on, bro, like, look at what Booker's doing. Look at what some of these like top 5 players in the NBA, like, being a 4th option on a team or being like a defensive player on a team, that only works if you have the other fucking pieces. Exactly. So that's one of my biggest triggers actually right now, as well.
Pretty sweet. The analogy is this, because I've often used this one. I'm sure you have fans do this all the time. You know, where fans go like, doesn't Impact have to be like the best LCS player ever? It's like, but his style of play wouldn't win if he was your best player. So by definition, no. Do you know what I mean? Like, the whole point of what makes him amazing is he's the supportive element that lets like some godlike mid laner or ADC win the league. So like, it's the same concept. Yeah, people always get lost in that one, because that's, you nailed it there as well. It's if they talk shit, bro. Because Draymond Green will like talk shit to like Charles Barkley. It's like, you do know he's like one of the best individual players ever.
No, I hate that shit.
What are you doing, bro? In that scenario, I'm sorry, it sounds fucked up. But if you want to say that by logic that I run, you have no rings by that logic. You both have no rings, but he's a better player, so he wins. You know what I mean? Like,
no, I hate seeing that. I hate seeing it when people like disrespect Charles Barkley for not having rings, because number one, if you're somebody who comes in and you're like a high draft pick, it's just harder to fucking win rings. Like, it takes you a while because you just get drafted to one of the, like, imagine what fucking Wembanyama, where he's gonna go. He's gonna end up on the fucking Spurs or the Pistons or some shit. He's not gonna have a chance to win rings. Even if he's the best player in the league, it'll be a ton of time before they actually develop like the ability to trade for other players that complement him. Like, it's a whole fucking process if you're, you know, one of the high draft picks. So I really hate the whole ring conversation in basketball anyway.
Well, it's MSI coming up now, guys. So that's the end for us. And we'll be back pretty soon, though, with the Best Damn League show. I haven't really got anything witty to say. Just let's see if Broken Blade chokes again.